this question, and I'd sort of answer it the same regardless whether it was your issue or any other issue. We need to work on prevention. We need to work on prevention in up front. To answer specifically what I would do in terms of ombudsman, I don't know the answer to that question. Whether that should be done, it should be determined by the people who are specialists in this area. They need to put together a budget and figure out how they want to spend their limited funds. If that's what they recommend and that's what they want to do, then I would support them.
Mr. McCormack?
Thank you, Mr. C. The answer is yes. Above and beyond the appointment, as you know, in the first 6 months, the new charter mandates an economic development plan be developed, and clearly the reentry issue, those young, primarily men coming back to the community, need to be addressed in that plan, and with employers advising how best to put them to useful work.
Mr. Lanci?
Yes. I would be the ombudsman. An executive is the person who leads. I have been to over 60 of the agencies, met with directors, and have come up with plans. I've also talked with people in this area. My feeling is that we have to educate more while they are in prison. The programs we have currently are not working when they come out. When we have them inside, we have to educate them and give them the tools they need so when they get out, they are employable.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Well, after a recent candidate forum we had dealing with reentry issues, a gentleman came up to me and said, I don't know if you remember me, Mr. Fitzgerald, but when you were a prosecutor, you put me in prison. And I said, well, so how's it going? But one of the things I've learned in conversations with him and other individuals are that there's multifaceted reasons why an individual that's out of the prison system isn't reintegrated in the economy, housing, substance abuse, mental health issues, and it does make sense to coordinate those services.
Mr. Ellison?
As an architect, I understand how important it is to be able to delegate responsibilities. So I think that the county executive job is too big to personally be that ombudsman, but we have to deal with this problem. As soon as that person commits the crime and goes to jail, we have failed. We failed to provide an economy which they can make a decent contribution to. So from that moment that they enter prison, am I over time? Sorry. I could go on and on.
Mr. Dolan?
Charlie, would I consider it? Yes, but only after we've reformed our entire health and human services so that the issues of mental health, job training, housing, and employment are dealt with in a more unified manner and single point of contact, so that we don't create a duplicative service. Their needs are great, but they're not unique to the other needs that human service folks have. So we got to make sure that we create a system that their needs are being met, and then we can look at whether an ombudsman would be the best to carry it out.
See if we can get another question. Yes.
This is for Mr. Dolan and Mr. Fitzgerald. 2 days ago, the Cleveland Plain Dealer stated that both of you had poached copywritten material from the Plain Dealer, which in fact was put on your campaign literature and appears to be misleading to the voters of Cuyahoga County. And at the very least, are ethical transgressions along with copyright violations. How do you account for this? And if this is going on now, what can voters of Cuyahoga County expect in the future from you?
Mr. Dolan, could I ask you to start?
Yeah, in my ads, when we put a newspaper, a quote from the newspaper, we quote, we cite where the paper came and the date upon which it came. And so I believe that is what you're appropriately allowed to do in commercials.
And Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yeah, we didn't use copyrighted material. We, as other campaigns did, including Mr. Dolan, we put out materials that said that we were endorsed by a Plain Dealer because we were in the primary. When they made their endorsement, which they did, unfortunately, recently, we won't use that claim anymore.
And another question?
Good afternoon. This question is for Mr. Dolan. You are running on a ticket with John Kasich, who has pledged to drastically reduce income taxes. thereby potentially leaving a hole in the state budget. How would you deal with the potential cuts to Cuyahoga County?
Deal with them how I dealt with before when I had an opportunity to do that. I joined Governor Strickland and was one of 2 Republicans to vote for the freeze of last year's income tax cut, because I understand, in my experience at the State House, is that the cuts affect our county and the delivery of the important services. So I would be a strong advocate for Cuyahoga County down there and lay out, with my history as being a finance chairman, to whether it's Governor Kasich or Governor Strickland, this is what we need up here. Free us from the mandates, give us the money, and let us do our job.
I'll also let Mr. Ellison and Mr. McCormack respond to that question. Mr. Ellison, can you begin?
The Republican-dominated state legislature also is the cause of our $8 billion, the looming $8 billion deficit we're going to be facing up here in the near future. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party that's been in charge here has committed us to hundreds of millions of dollars in a project that doesn't necessarily benefit us. Both of these parties, neither of these parties have a new idea about how we can deal with our money here in Cuyahoga County.
And Mr. McCormack?
Thank you. I served with John Kasich. I know him well. Should he succeed, what I would emphasize, people die. They will die without funding for these programs. The Help Me Grow program, visiting young women who are pregnant, the early childhood program, the only chance most kids in Cleveland have. Children's Services has slashed programming, and they don't answer phone calls any longer. Kids that drop out of school, we need to heavily invest in those children, or they won't make it.
Let's get another question. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tony George. I'm a small businessman from the area, and I got a question for all the candidates up there. What would you do, or how do you see your role as a county executive to deal with the banks that are strangling small business from growing? They're not lending money right now, and they're closing the loop on guys that are borderline that can create jobs if they were lent the money to create the jobs. How do you see your role as a county executive to get the banks to lend the money?
Let's start with Mr. Dolan to my far right and work our way left.
As an attorney, it's hard to get banks to lend money to clients. One, we have to create an atmosphere for job growth so people understand that there's a government that understands the needs here. So we're creating an environment for growth so banks can see that companies have a chance to succeed here. Most banks are federally regulated. You work closely with your congressional delegation to make sure that what we're trying to accomplish on the ground here in Cuyahoga County is being communicated to the bank regulators so that there is a lessening of it. But the best way is to create an environment for success.
Mr. Ellison?
The first thing we need to do is take control of our own financial futures. And I propose that we establish a different relationship with our money by keeping it here. I have proposed a Bank of Cuyahoga County that would be specifically oriented towards investing and being invested in the success of our financial enterprises here in the county. The county keeps hundreds of millions of dollars on deposit at any one time, and we could use this in public-private partnerships with the local banks to fund things like small businesses, do microfinancing, fund cooperative businesses and businesses where employees own the business.
And Mr. Fitzgerald?
Well, 2 things. First of all, I think that the federal policy in terms of giving assistance to banks but not requiring them to loan as a condition of that assistance was a mistake, and I think that we'll have some influence, the county executive will, over federal policy working with our local representatives. Secondly, the county has a fairly large pool of money that it holds in reserve and daily cash balance, and it is invested in a lot of local banks. And I think it would be fair, if they're going to get the benefit of having that cash and getting the interest on that cash, if there would be some requirements, including job creation and fair loaning practices.
Mr. Lanci?
It's my understanding that the county has its money invested actually in New York.